Radio reception's great here.
Hi, my name's David Byrne, and I made a movie about a bunch of people in Virgil, Texas.
David, relax. Relax. Remember to look up into the camera.
They're getting ready for the 150th anniversary of their state. They're calling it a celebration of specialness.
It's created confusion and chaos.
What time is it?
No time to look back.
Yep. It's fancy driving, all right.
True Stories is a 1986 film about a bunch of people in Virgil, Texas. It stars John Goodman, Spalding Gray, Susie Kurtz, and David Byrne. Hey, we're talking about a tiny little film that you may have seen, or maybe you missed it. So Jason, tell me, why are people like us talking about True Stories?
Are you going to make as many talking head puns? Because that's going to turn me into a psycho killer. This must be the place that I'm going to bury your body. I could do this all day. I have their whole discography.
I wish I could stay as
Buildings.
dead-faced as David Byrne, like, during that whole thing, too. But
There'd be nothing but flowers at your funeral. I could do this all day, John. You see what you started?
They call me the dancing bear. Ah! I mean, this was one that's been in the hopper for a while, but it was kind of like one of those. What are we gonna say? Like, it's almost too good, right? Like, I don't know.
But our job on this podcast is not to say a bunch of insightful things about the way this film was made, like we went to film school, because we didn't. The point of the cult of films is to tell people, hey, this is a cult film for a good reason. We recommend it. So we're going to talk about this movie from like the standpoint of people who appreciated the movie, and we might not like get too precious about how the sausage was made. The sausage is the movie.
We're going to be like David Byrne or The Visitor and kind of walk through the screen, kind of jump right into it. I have accompanying me a bottle of High West whiskey. It's made in Utah, so flavor fail on that. But, you know, it's got a guy on a cowboy hat on it, so.
Couldn't get any Texas whiskey?
Couldn't get Texas whiskey for some reason.
Whiskey.
Whiskey.
Texas whiskey.
Jason?
Why are you talking like that, Dad? What? Talking like what? I'm saying what weird.
Go give me the Cool Whip.
Inspired by my favorite scene in the movie where Spalding Gray decides to illustrate everything that's going on, you know, with the workplace being the mecca of everyone's lives, and the concept of weekends don't even exist anymore.
Linda, Larry, there's no concept of weekends anymore.
That's a fairly unhinged scene, and it's my favorite. So he was playing with asparagus and cherry tomatoes, and like there was a lobster on the table, and I thought, what about making that dinneriest drink I could come up with? So I have a Bloody Mary here with my own homemade pickled asparagus juice in the Bloody Mary mix, and I rimmed the glass with Old Bay.
Excuse me, Mr. Culver. I forgot what these peppers represent.
It's very good. I don't know how True Stories it is, but like I'm like, what drink reminds me of Papa Legba? Like I didn't overthink it too much. I just picked my favorite scene and drank what I thought I would want to be drinking watching it. So cheers.
Cheers. This whole movie kind of is the best David Lynch film not directed by David Lynch.
I mean, it was a David with 5 letters in his last name, the second of which is Y.
That's a sick burn, Jason.
David Byrne's a certifiable fucking lunatic.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers, of all people, are like, why should we give you $25 million to make a movie or however much this costs? And he's like, I'll have the guy from Groundhog Day co-write it. And they're like, all right, Steven Tobolowsky from Sneakers.
Legend has it that he didn't do too much on it. David Byrne he wrote like 95% of it, but he didn't want it to look like a total vanity piece. So he's like, I want to put my friends on there. So he let Stephen Tobolowsky and Beth Henley share writing credits. But this is, for all intents and purposes, all
Not
from...
written. How do you get writing credits on something that's just a David Byrne fever dream?
Right. He was in the room when the peyote was smoked, while coming up with this premise. But, this film has a little bit for everybody. It is a fun watch, and it's one that I like to kind of not freak people out with, but just like have on in the background. I used to have it on in the background at like gatherings and stuff, and it's always like... It's there, and then you have that moment in the party where people just kind of stop and look at this. It's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Because it's so weird, it's so bizarre, but it's the most uncynical, positive, feel-good film that also doubles as a great Talking Heads music video.
I got a wild, spending all of my money and time on
I think this movie is a great Rorschach test for how you're feeling as a culture.
Sure.
Because when this came out in the 80s, everyone's like, this is sort of an alien in the form of, like, I guess, an immigrant from Wales.
Right.
But, like a foreign transplant kind of summarizing American life, in the way that Kurt Vonnegut would write it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is Breakfast of Champions Texas style. Sort of a deal when someone just sort of like, well, here's what I've figured out watching these Americans go to the mall. And now when I watch it, I'm like, this is a pretty scathing indictment of capitalism, if I'm being perfectly honest. The movie didn't change.
Right.
Just my feelings did, I guess. But especially the Spalding Gray scene where he's talking about the concept of weekends don't exist anymore. I'm like, man, that is chilling.
Yes.
In today's current corporate climate. So perhaps this movie is just it's a barometer for how much pressure the working class is feeling at any given time.
But it's done in such a way that makes you smile. This is the warm hug before the nuke goes off. Like, especially David Byrne's delivery and all this. And you said the word alien, and it is so perfect because I'm still not convinced that he's not an actual alien in this. He is the role of the visitor. He's the narrator. He literally is looking at this, for whatever reason, this specific town, because it's their 150th anniversary. It's the celebration of specialness.
This, out here, this is Virgil, Texas. Their celebration's gonna happen this Friday. They're gonna have a parade that runs down the main street in the morning. And then, outside of town, that night, they're going to have a talent show.
And he decides to step off of wherever he came from and jump into this area. And so he integrates perfectly because he's so nondescript. He's not there to take the attention off of anybody. He's just there to cheer on everybody.
Well, just check these out here.
Those are great.
Yeah.
He's non-judgmental. He's just there to drive around and kind of document this thing, but not in a I'm going to steal you and shove an anal probe up you kind of way.
Sure. He's much more unsettling than that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you probe people, you ruin one guy's day. But, like, if you come up with the name for the band Radiohead, you're going to disturb everybody.
I'm picking up something good. Hey, Radiohead.
So a little bit of backstory. In 1984, Jonathan Demme made a movie called Stop Making Sense that was probably the greatest live concert recording of all time because Demme directed it, like at the peak of his powers. It was a Talking Heads concert, for the love of God. Like, David Byrne's giant suit came from that. Like, if you know one thing about the Talking Heads, you probably know, like, a few lines from Once in a Lifetime, and then you know about the giant suit, right?
I wanted my head to appear smaller, and the easiest way to do that was to make my body bigger.
That's where that's from. Based on the success of that, Warner Brothers decided that everybody wanted David Byrne to do the weird thing he did. If you own Stop Making Sense on DVD, like you should, One of the bonus features is David Byrne interviewing himself. He plays a bunch of different characters, all being interviewed by him.
My favorite thing ever. Oh
and he does this weird shtick where he will dodge his own questions. He'll ask himself a question. He'll be like, I'll tell you that later. And that plays so weird in Stop Making Sense. It's surreal. Just, it's not high comedy, but for 1984, it was a pretty good bit for a non-comedian to be doing, right? And he does the same exact delivery here.
I have something to say about the difference between American and European cities. But I forgot what it is. I have it written down at home somewhere.
That exact thing in Stop Making Sense, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was totally a comedy bit, but he does the exact same thing in this movie seriously, and it's just like, oh, this guy's weird. Not this whole movie is going to be very funny. Because as weird as this movie is, and as funny as these exact performances would be in a different context, there's something so wacky about this where it feels like a giant music video that like it never really gets funny. But
right.
David Byrne's being hilarious the whole time, but everybody else acts like he's not being funny, and then the audience is sort of like, I guess he's not being hilarious. And that works for this movie for whatever reason.
This movie is so much more funny now. The more you watch it, the funnier it gets. Mm-hmm. Because when I watched it the first time, it's just like, whatever. It was just so... It just felt like something that you would watch in economics class or something.
They're calling it a celebration of special mess. But this place is completely normal. Anyway, this is the Varicorp building just outside Virgil. It's cool. It's a multi-purpose shape. A box.
But then everything he says is hilarious. Everything. Yeah. And I mean, he is a comedian.
No, he's a crazy person.
Sure.
Crazy people are hilarious because everything they do is incongruous. And incongruity is very funny. But like, was he trying to be funny when he like bought an abandoned building and hooked up like hammers and like blowers to pipes and stuff in the building and turned the entire building into a giant organ? Like, was that for laughs, or was that just because he had a crazy idea because he smoked peyote in the desert with a shirt off? Like, yeah. I'm pretty sure the guy's just nuts, and that's perfectly fine.
Right.
Like, the stuff he does is funny because you have a normal brain.
And he's more unsettling than like a Tom Green, because Tom Green is as crazy, but he's more like outward and in your face.
Proud.
But David Byrne, just sitting there, deadpan. He got interviewed by some local news, Texas, Virgil, Texas. He must have been 80 years old, and that's being generous. They released the interview with all the mess ups and stuff, because I guess like halfway through the audio went down, but then they never stopped recording. And he insisted that they release the entire interview with all of that in there. And it's just like, you could tell everyone in the room is just kind of a little creeped out. And that's just like, it's the unsettledness about him. He's never off, because I think that's really him. And that's why everything comes off as so genuine. And I think that bleeds out to the other characters in this, because, I mean, it's not like you have a bunch of people from Virgil, Texas. You have real actors in here. You have Academy Award winner John Goodman, Swoozie Kurtz, the fantastic Spalding Gray.
In his infinite wisdom, he had an idea. He said, I know what I'll do. I'll make some people that like it this way.
There's definitely a feeling, but let's kind of scale it back. Let's start at the beginning. What is True Stories about?
True Stories is about, I think we've alluded to it a little bit. There's a town in Texas that's having their bicentennial, and they're going to do a celebration of all the things that are great about this town. They're going to do a big parade. They're going to do a talent show at the mall, complete with a fashion show. It's going to be great. So David Byrne, named the narrator, comes into town for the celebration to observe everything. And he gets to observe people doing the preparations for the talent show. So he shows up like a week before and just kind of hangs out, and everybody is really interested in showing him the town and kind of showing off their way of life. everybody in the movie is a weird person.
Well, but before that, he starts it out as like a super fact boy, right? Like, it starts out at kind of a dark place.
Mm-hmm.
He's telling you, he's like, this is just a town, but all of these horrible things. Here's the horrible history.
Texas comes from the Caddoan word for friend. However, the Caddo were among the first to be wiped out by the early white settlers. A group of Spanish settlers offered the Indians a chance to become slaves. The Indians thought about it, decided it was not a good idea, and killed the Spaniards.
It's sort of peak 1980s because basically this town there's one place that everybody works, and they're making computer parts, and everybody works at the computer parts place, and then they go drink at the same karaoke bar, you know, and they shop at the one mall, and everybody kind of does the same stuff. And it's big enough that like it can have that one industry, but the town's small enough that everybody knows everybody's business. Just by sort of like this weird Socratic thing where he just asks everybody their business, he sort of puts everybody's business out there.
Mm-hmm.
I guess all the severely weird people feel less weird and alone by the end of the movie. They feel like they're more connected to their neighbors, and I think the celebration of the town's bicentennial brings everybody together with a little bit of help from a guy just asking really obvious questions and occasionally singing a song about how there's too many products on commercials.
You get 2 for 1 for a limited time.
There was a lot of buzz around this being like, I think these people are going to think that you're talking down to them because it's a small town, you know, small town mentality, exploiting these people, but it's not really. Yes, you have some parodies of tropes like the town liar, right? That's written all of Elvis's songs. It's kind of implied that Swoosie Kurtz's character is kind of maybe like a rich widow or something. You know, she just has so much money that she just doesn't have to do anything besides sit in a bed and get fed by whatever the latest robot. Yeah, exactly. So yes, there is some veiled indictments on it, but it's never done in a way where it's like talking down to them, because he is just in there, and yes, he's an outsider, but he's at least portraying salt of the earth. I'm one of you.
The extent that people felt like they were being talked down to, I think it's probably just because some of their behavior was a little bit indefensible.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like Earl Culver wouldn't talk to his wife at all.
Even that's played as like a warm thing because they're not even mad at each other.
Linda, would you ask your mom how the fashion show went today, okay?
Sure, Dad. Mom, how'd it go today? Oh, Linda, you tell him it was just wonderful.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, sort of weird. Really, if you think about this movie as John Goodman's Louis Fine being the main character, the movie makes a lot more sense, actually.
He's the only one that has like a through line, him and Swoosie Kurtz, right? Because everything else is just a choppy series of vignettes.
Yeah, he just shows up and talks to a person and then they're weird and then he leaves.
Yeah.
But he seems really intent on seeing Lewis's arc through to the end.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. It's like he's there to see it through and then he could finally move on once that kind of wraps itself up.
The song People Like Us is sort of a nice framing device for Lewis's whole arc, because he doesn't figure out the whole song until the very end of the movie, until he's done all his progression. So he'll tell people he's working on it and he'll tell them like a verse of it, and it doesn't all hang together until he figures out fully, you know, what his arc is, who he is and what he wants.
What about my music? It's awful sad. I couldn't have that kind of sadness in my life.
And only then is the song finished. And only then did I actually like this song.
Right.
Because like the album version, I've heard it and I'm like, I don't know, this song's boring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it would come on and he wouldn't even get 1950 out of his mouth before I hit next track. And
tough crowd.
And then hearing John Goodman's version of it and just, I don't know, it's a lot more of a dark and cynical song than I thought. He didn't learn to embrace his loneliness. He learned to embrace his sadness and stop pretending to be cheerful for everybody because they wanted a big dancing monkey, right? They wanted Louis, the dancing bear. I think he embraced kind of the fact that he likes sad songs. And once he did that, I think I don't know. I think he became more of an authentic person and somebody that someone could fall for versus just being a phony because he's desperate.
See, and that scene, I took a couple things very differently from your take, because you said it wasn't until he's kind of up there and he went through his arc and everything. Also, right before that, went to a voodoo witch doctor, which is simultaneously narrating musically throughout the talent show. So I always took it as he had to go to this weird outside spiritual thing, like a faux pas, like a taboo, because everyone in that town, you could tell, is like, they all go to that church. It's played as a very, small town minded, kind of right wing, traditional, Baptist or whatever analog for whatever churches. It took Lewis to go and dabble with the dark arts to actually get something, to get something kind of congruent that he could put out there into the world. And then it took someone as equally as damaged as him, as Swoozie Kurtz's character, to finally mash up that way.
I think having Pop Staples sing Papa Legba to you right into your stupid face is just another bad date.
Yeah.
Like, I think what he got out of that was that kind of stuff wasn't for him, not that was the final missing piece that he needed.
Interesting.
It was just another date that didn't work out.
Yeah.
Because he was trying everything.
I will use this opportunity to throw some shade at a macro YouTube channel. I don't like to do this, but in this instance, I love the channel Bad Lip Reading. They do some great work over there. They have like millions of subscribers. They'll never see this, but the Witch Doctor's song is the exact same song, at least like, different words, of course, as My Stick, the Yoda thing that they did that has like tens of millions of views. So
yeah,
they really need to add like a writing credit for the Voodoo Witch Doctor, Pop Staples, because they straight up ripped off that song, and that always bothered me.
You'll be magnet for money. You'll be magnet for love.
You can't bring up that song without getting stuck in my head the whole night, so thanks for that.
Yeah.
Who should watch this movie then?
Fuck. Everybody? I mean, right?
I don't know. I feel like I'm one of those guys. Everybody knows that guy. The guy that's like, oh, this is on YouTube. We have to watch this. And like, we're having a party. We're not going to sit and watch the TV for an hour and a half. So just kind of like, you watch it and see if anybody else is looking at the TV. And then you point, you're like, huh? Wasn't that great? I try not to be that guy. But even though I really think people should watch this movie, and I sometimes ambush them with it, I'm not going to try this with everyone.
Sure.
This movie's not for everybody. I think this movie is for a very small number of people. But I think everybody needs to see it to figure out if they're that kind of person. Because I feel like this movie finds you versus you finding it. I think the people that need it to mean something specific will just find it at the right time in their life. And I think if you watch it at different times, it'll mean different things.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can already tell if you're going to like this based on what we've said.
We could paint it a little broader too. Like, would you say if like you're into David Lynch shit, you would be into this? Like, it's the surreal stuff, right? It's Better Off Dead, but a little weirder and a little more dry, a little less obvious, I think.
This might be like a good drugs movie, but not pot, maybe.
Yeah,
sort of a thing. I don't know.
Such good music. Everything sounds incredible in this. And it's like, it's all vignettes, so it's all like mashed together, but it's the transitions that are like the music pieces. It's just like, David Byrne's walking through like a housing development that's being like brought up. He's just like, isn't that weird that there's going to be a bathroom right there in the middle of nowhere? And they're saying all this weird capitalistic shit, and then out of nowhere you get like 10 kids walking through and just like, hey, you want to live forever? Do what we say, and then they're gone. It's just like, and that's just the transitional piece. But I mean,
yeah,
the fashion show is just so brilliant, and it's so. Like, she's so great. She's like the realtor from Beetlejuice.
Eddie McEnroe.
McEnroe, yeah.
They had her sing the song, too.
Yeah.
So these are Talking Heads songs, but on most of the songs in the movie, the band doesn't play them. They do on a few.
Yeah.
You know?
The commercials yeah.
Yeah. But most of them, the actor sings the song, which is, it was a different choice. It's not just a Talking Heads music video collection because they don't do all the songs. They do fewer than half. I think that was an interesting choice, and I think it made me appreciate some of the songs more. I think Andy McEnroe's voice is better suited for Dream Operator than David Byrne's is. I didn't like that song that much before I saw it in this movie. That's kind of a ballsy choice they made, I think, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. And like you said, with John Goodman, too. With people like us, it's a Talking Head song. It's not a banger. With the earnestness and the time that you spend with that character makes that song
And you're
pop.
invested in the song because you watched him write it over the course of the movie.
Yes. Those are my favorite songs, are the ones that are performed by the actors in here. And Spalding Gray, his pre-talent show, his warm-up, his cold open, I guess.
Ooh.
And he's just doing he's got his hands up on his hips, and he's just like, everything's got to, solid, and he's making all these strange hand gestures. There's just so many fucking weird choices in this film that make it so memorable. How quotable is this film?
Not at all quotable.
Really?
I don't think so. Could you, describe this to someone who hasn't seen, I don't know. I don't think it's that quotable.
It's more of a secret handshake, like a knock on a speakeasy door? Sure.
I think that's right.
Okay, I get that. Yeah. It's just because not a lot of people saw it, unfortunately. It had a $2.5 million budget. The way this got leveraged to be made by Warner Brothers is because that was part of the re-signing of the Talking Heads to their record label, that David Byrne wanted to make a straightforward film. And that was part of the deal. And I mean, Jesus, good on Warner Brothers to just be like, we have a madman. Let's give him some money. Because, I mean, this, for all intents and purposes, this probably could have been made for $1 million. Because it's just people walking around. It's not a dynamically shot film. None of that. Hopefully most of that budget just went to paying the actors or the non-actors even more so.
This didn't make that much money at the box office. This made $2.5 million, which, that's $86, but still, that's not great. Mm-hmm. They probably lost money on this movie.
For sure.
However, I do not care if Warner Brothers lost some money because they brought this movie into the world.
Yeah.
It is 90 minutes. It is PG and it is perfect.
This could be shown in church. There is nothing in here that is offensive. If you are paying attention, there is some real smacks to some, like we said, super scathing indictments on capitalism, on a lot of isms in here. But it's done. It feels like someone's presenting you with a gift basket because you just moved in next door. It's so neighborly feeling that it's just so unoffensive, even if it's just ripping shit apart. And that's what makes it so cool. You don't have to be loud and obnoxious to tear the system down. This gets the point across 100%.
Yeah. Watch this high and try to find all 50 sets of twins.
We didn't even talk about the twins.
There are 50 sets of twins in the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
It's It's a lot.
Drinking game. I mean, yeah.
I don't know if it's 50 different sets of twins or 50 times sets of twins are on screen, but it's a lot.
From what I heard, it was different. So there is a lot of twins in this film. It's like you said, it's hard to say who really to tell people about this film. Like if you're in my inner circle, you've probably seen True Stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and it's also something that you kind of grew up with too. So this might be one of those unfortunate cult films that is going to kind of die off because people at some point people are just going to stop talking about this film.
I mean, maybe. I feel like as many people know it now as did in 1986. It's just not for everybody, but I wish more people would see it. I wish everybody would watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Just so everybody who it was for would be sure to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're either going to love this or hate it. Nobody's been medium on this movie. In my experience. Nobody's been like, that was just okay. You're going to be either utterly charmed and disarmed by this, or you're going to be like, I need more of a movie in my movies.
That's really interesting. Have you sat with, because in my experiences, everybody that I've showed and everyone that knows about this film loves it, like you said. Have you sat with people watching it and they just utterly shit on it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just didn't. Yeah. I could see not liking this movie. It's kind of a lot to ask of someone.
I don't know. It's just so nice. It's just like, oh, I don't like a handshake or something, you know?
Yeah.
You have to be a real cynical fuck to like hate on True Stories.
I guess you could just find it boring.
Yeah.
Like anybody under 12 is not going to like this movie at all.
Like I said, a real cynical fuck.
It's like you said, it seems like an economics video you watch when your teacher's hungover.
Sure. It's cool. Jason, where can, when you're not driving your car that's not a rental, it's just privately owned.
It's privately owned.
Where can everyone find you?
I'm on Twitter at Jason E. Alt.
And I'm also on Twitter at John the Host. Also at The Cult of Films. If you want to follow this very show, you could do that. You could also listen to this in podcast form on all your favorite podcasting sites like iTunes and Spotify. Leave us 10-gallon hats or lawnmowers. We'll fix them up and we'll join the parade as well. You could also, thumbs up the video, share it, tell everyone that we're talking about cult films. Because that would be very appreciated.
One time David Byrne sang a love song to a lamp. That's pretty weird.
Yep. It's fancy driving, all right.